This is Take a Cue, Season 3, Episode 5.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Hey there, music educators. Welcome to Season 3 of Take a Cue, the podcast that hits all the right notes when talking about teaching band in elementary, middle, and high schools. I'm Jen Wise.
And I'm Erik Donough. Together, we've got 40 years of experience in New Jersey public schools, and we're here to share our passion, our insights, and a few laughs along the way.
Whether you're just starting out or you're a seasoned pro, Take a Cue is your backstage pass to inspiring young musicians, navigating the highs and lows of band directing and making every rehearsal count.
From innovative teaching strategies to the best ways to handle those tricky moments, we've got tips, stories, and expert advice to keep you motivated and make your program shine.
If you're enjoying what you hear, please remember to give us a 5-star rating and leave a review on your favorite podcast app. Your feedback helps us bring more great content your way.
And let's keep the conversation going. You can interact with us and stay updated on all things Take a Cue by following us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Take a Cue Podcast. We'd love to hear your thoughts, answer your questions, and see how you're applying our tips in your classroom.
So grab your baton, tune up those instruments, and join us as we dive into the world of band directing with a fresh perspective and a lot of enthusiasm.
Get ready to take your teaching to the next level. This is Take a Cue.
Hey, Erik, happy March.
Jen, happy Music in Our Schools month.
Woohoo!
Yes, and there was a lot of music in our schools.
Oh my gosh, we're making great music here in North Jersey.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Yes, we are. How's everything going over there in elementary land?
It's good. We just started preparing for our Music in Our Schools Month concert, our all township concert. So that's
Right.
coming up, and we've got over 200 students in 5th grade band, 1 grade level here. So we are going to bring 2 bands to all township for Music in Our Schools Month, and that's huge. It's going to be a great time.
Wow, fantastic!
Yep.
Fantastic. It's another night out. And, there's a lot of stuff going on in the spring, but it's always fun for those kids and their parents to see all the good stuff that we do here in Livingston. So
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's good for us. Like, we got to advocate for ourselves when times are good. And here we are. Like, we've got a great thing going. Let's showcase it this month. So
Indeed.
Yeah.
And if our listeners are interested in more information about other ways that you can celebrate and use Music in Our Schools Month to your advantage, you should definitely take a listen to Jen's Takeaway, which aired actually the day we're recording this, which is Monday, March 10th.
That's
so go
right.
take a listen for some cool rah-rah band tips and tricks.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I'm all about promoting, Music in Our Schools Month in our school. Cause it's just one of those things that, everybody's ears perk up and they see your program, just for that little moment. And it's good for you. It's good for your students. So
Yes. Agreed.
Yeah. How about you? What are you up to?
Well, we're just kind of getting ready for our concerts, and we've got 3 of them in the spring. All Township is coming up first. This year, it's the 8th grade band that'll be joining the rest of the bands from the different schools, and so we're working on those pieces. I think I mentioned on another episode we've got 5 different pieces that we're getting ready for different performances in spring, which is something I haven't done before. So, a little less drill and kill going on here and just trying to get through everything and make sure the kids have, run everything at least once before the performance is.
That's great.
It's kind of fun.
Yeah.
Keeps us on our toes.
Oh, that's big. And are you playing any musicals soon? Because we've got a great conversation coming tonight about pit orchestras.
Oh, yes. Jen, I just finished my 3rd musical in as many months. It was The Wizard of Oz here in Morristown. Not at Morristown High School, at a private school here in Morristown. And it was lovely. I'd never played there before. And the kids did a great job, and as did the pit. So it was a lot of fun. But I'm happy to take a little break before the next one.
Okay.
Which is in a couple weeks, which is The Prom. I've never played that. I've never even seen it.
I don't know
it exists.
Yeah, I don't know that one, but I can't wait to hear about it. So,
no, it'll be fun. Mm-hmm. But tonight we've got a great guest on, and we had a great conversation with David Gallagher right here from Morristown.
Right. Yeah, and we really got into it about setting up your school musical pit orchestra with filled with mostly students and some pros, and how you can make that work for you, and how David makes that work for Morristown High School and the middle school, we learned a lot about what he does.
Year after year, the pit orchestras here in Morristown just do a fantastic job. And I know that is in no small part due to David's leadership. And he's also won some awards because of it. And so we really wanted to pick his brain about how he does what he does. And, with all the kids that are coming to him from his amazing feeder programs here in Morristown.
Yeah, I definitely got some good tips if I ever find myself in front of a pit orchestra. I haven't yet, but I will definitely try some of his things because it sounds like they work, and it sounds like his students really get a great experience.
Yeah, and we also shared some of our own on the other side of the baton thoughts about things that we love about playing musicals and things that we don't love when they happen. So it's a good thing to keep in mind, as if you're a listener who's starting out in a program where you have to do the musicals, or you're starting a musical program. These are going to be some great tips. And you know what? If you've been doing musicals for 20 years, you're going to learn something good here too.
So let's hear from David. Let's hear about some best practices for getting your students involved in pit orchestras at your school.
3, 2, 1.
Here you go.
Jen, it's musical season.
I love musical season.
Me too. I just got back from Oz just yesterday.
Yeah.
And, the green has worn off.
I was going to say,
a nice rosy glow.
Yeah. Did you hang up your ruby slippers for the week? And
Yes. There
you go.
But yeah, so we thought that it would be a great time to bring on one of our local colleagues here from Morristown, David Gallagher, who teaches at Morristown High School and does a lot of amazing things with pit orchestras there, in addition to marching band and jazz bands and 10 million other things at the school. But David is on to talk with us today about his experience creating award-winning pits with students, which is not an easy feat to do.
No, it's not. Welcome, David. We're so happy to have you today.
Hi, guys. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to talk musicals and talk pit orchestra.
In the 5 minutes you have between all your other things.
We did. We're doing Les Miserables at Morristown right now, and the Act 1 sitz probe finished at around 6 o'clock today. Ran home, ate dinner, and here we are to talk about it.
Oh wow! Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Jen, just for our listeners so they know, David and I, we go way back. As a matter of fact, we go way back to the first time I think I ever met David was when he was in middle school and I was in his pit orchestra for his middle school show.
Oh my goodness.
Which I think was Wizard of Oz.
Yes, I was in 8th grade and Erik was playing in the pit.
Wow. Oh, that's such a fun connection.
Yeah.
Wow. That's great.
So we wanted to kind of pick David's brain today because, Jen, have you done a lot of conducting of musicals in your career?
No, I have not. I've not done a lot of conducting of musicals myself. Lots of playing, always 1 or 2 a season. And, since high school, just I really enjoy playing high school musical pits and, professional when I can get the gig. Like this season, I'm not playing. I don't have a full run scheduled, but I'm subbing for a couple friends. I got those on the calendar. But I think I played my first pit in high school, Music Man, Read One,
classic.
And a couple people in that pit are still out there teaching the pros and everything, and I can connect. It was really neat to sit next to some pros, and then I got picked up by a community orchestra from that. And that first paycheck playing with a community orchestra and you're in high school and you're like, whoa, wait, I get paid to do this now. And that was so cool. I've
ever gotten paid for a community anything. So
I
well
know,
done.
Right. So yeah, that was community theater thing. And oh man, it was it's such a cool experience when you're in high school and you get to play with pros and everything. It is. Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
I remember being in high school. I was always on the stage, so I remember the first time I heard a live pit while I was on the stage, and like I think I forgot what I was doing because it sounded so amazing.
Yeah.
And it was right there in front of the stage. David, did you have that same experience? Because I know you were on stage before you ended up in front of the stage.
Yeah, I did cast and was in our middle school shows and our high school shows. I was always on stage. I remember having a live pit in the middle school and just how cool of an experience that was. But I'll never forget freshman year was like our first official sits probe that we had. For those of you who don't know, it's very much a theater nerd term at this point, but sits probe comes from the Wagnerian opera days, and it just means seated rehearsal. And it's the first time traditionally that the cast and the pit get to meet each other, and all you have to worry about is the music. It's just play your heart out, sing your heart out. There's no set pieces, lights, costumes, hair, makeup, nothing else to get in the way. But I remember freshman year, we had our first real sits probe for Fiddler on the Roof. And walking into the high school band room and just hearing the orchestra playing the music from Fiddler was absolutely incredible.
Nice.
So cool.
Well, I can tell you, Jen, I've only conducted a couple pits in my days, and that was years and years ago, like over a decade ago.
Okay.
So this is not something that I've had a lot of experience in either, but I know that David has had quite a lot of experience in pit orchestras. As a matter of fact, he directs 2 a year because one is not enough. He does the middle school and in Morristown and the high school. How many middle schools do you know that have a live pit? Like none is the answer.
Yeah.
Is my answer.
Yeah, it's close. It's definitely under 10. It's around 5 or 6 in the state that I know of.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's what's really cool about what we have going on here in Morristown. But I'm really looking forward to kind of hearing from David and learning a bit, and especially for our listeners who maybe are just starting out in a job where they have to do the pit orchestra, or maybe they're just taking over a pit orchestra conducting position, or they're doing something in community theater. So I think this will be a really great conversation.
David, like, what was your, kind of formative experiences?
My first musicals that I directed was senior year of college. I went to Rutgers, Mason Gross, and the education majors didn't have to do a recital back then. It was optional. And then I told myself, okay, I'm going to apply to the musical theater program on campus to be the pit conductor. And if I get that, then that's what I'm going to focus on. Cause that's like a big capstone project instead of the recital. And I wound up being involved in all 3 of the productions that year. Conducting, what did we did How to Succeed in Business, Merrily We Roll Along, and The Producers was our 3 shows that year. And I conducted 2 of them. I played in the pit for 1, did the vocals for all 3. That was my first foray into pit. And then right out of college, there was Glenridge High School hired me to direct their musical the first year I was out of school. And then I wound up working in Morristown as the middle school band director. And the middle school was the first show I started doing because I was friends with the directors, because I was a student in Morristown before I started teaching here. And then the following year, the high school job became available, and the director reached out to me and said, "Hey, listen, I know you do the middle school show, but any chance you'd want to do 2?" And suckered right into it.
That's great. That's how these things go, isn't it? So,
Nice.
Oh, that's great. That's some great experience.
So I'd like, David, before we get into some of our questions in our conversation here,
Sure.
I'd like for our audience to know, when we say award winning, we're not kidding. So can you talk about, can you brag a little bit about your experience? Like what what awards have you won? What's your, what are you most proud of?
So there's a couple of different theater circuits in New Jersey that you can apply to participate in. The biggest one is the Paper Mill Rising Star Awards that's run through Paper Mill Playhouse. They are incredibly professional in everything that they do. And it really, if they sing high praise of your show, it really means a lot. So I've been nominated twice by them in the last 4 years for Best Pit Orchestra and Best Music Direction. and I tell my kids this also, every year they accept 100 schools. Whoever the first 100 schools that apply are, that's the 100 schools that are competing, and nominations go out to 10 schools. So if you get a nomination, you're in the top 10 of the 100 schools that participated, which, if you wind up being the one in the 1%, like, good on you, but just getting into that top 10 every year is my goal. And then recently the Bergen Performing Arts Center up in Bergen County, they started doing theater awards also, and it's available to the whole state, but they've mostly been the North Jersey half so far. And we've won 2 years in a row now. Cinderella and Mary Poppins pit orchestras both won the awards for Best Pit the last 2 years.
Oh.
And how many, what's the ratio of students to teachers for those like award-winning pits?
In Cinderella, we had 1 professional, and in Mary Poppins, we had 2. So lots, like Cinderella, I think was 23, 24 students. Mary Poppins was 15, 16 students.
Right. I wanted to make sure I kind of knew that, but I wanted to make sure our listeners knew that you're not receiving these awards and having a pit full of professionals, that you're really able to do these high level pits with students, which is awesome. And I think a lot of our listeners might be interested in knowing just how exactly you do that.
It takes a lot. There's a lot of details that go into that. I would say before we get into the nitty gritty with the questions, I would say the biggest thing with any students in any of your ensembles, teachers out there listening, is the students only know what you tell them. So if you set high expectations and you set high goals and they don't know anything other than that, they're gonna work to reach those goals and attain whatever you set out for them. So the kids in the pit orchestra know that what they're getting into, and they know what to expect, and they really love trying to make the music the best it can be.
How do we get into this? Like, how do you kind of pick the show to fit your students, or do you kind of have a show in mind? Do you where do we start?
So at both the middle school and the high school, I work with great teams, and I would say that's the biggest piece of advice I can give to anybody getting involved with theater on any level is just surround yourself with amazing people that you can learn from, that you can lean on, because that's what makes it fun. The middle school, because I don't teach at the middle school anymore, I don't know the kids as well. So I let the directors, they'll come to me and be like, hey, we're thinking about, these 2 or 3 shows. And then I give my input purely from the pit orchestra perspective of what I think would be fun, what I think would be manageable, or like, oh, you want to do that? Did you know that it has a screaming high trumpet part and we'd have to hire like 10 professionals for that show because of how complicated it is? At the high school, it's much more like for the high school, not only do I conduct the pit, but I'm the full music director. So I'm doing all the vocals for the show as well, which is another angle that we can get into talking about. So picking a show starts with the cast is the big thing. Those are sort of the most important chess pieces. Do we have the cast for a specific show? And the flip side of that is, okay, these are the kids that we do have. What will put them on a pedestal, put them in the spotlight, and really show them off? That's where our conversations start. And then we come up with a couple of shows from that point. And then we want the show to be fun for the cast, be educational for the cast, be fun and entertaining for the audience. The instrumentation of the pit orchestra, it's not a huge factor in that it's like, oh, this show doesn't have a viola, we shouldn't do that one. We don't get into that nitty gritty, but we're very fortunate at Morristown that we have such an amazing music program that, Grease, Mamma Mia, these rock pits that are 4 or 5 instruments, we tend to shy away from those because we do want, the pit is not the most important part of the show, but it is an integral part of the show, and we want those kids to have success. Just like the cast and just like the crew. So that is the size of the pit overall is a factor.
I love that you really take that into consideration and that your team is cool with that. I think that's a really important thing for our listeners to take note of, is that you really do take a look at the size of the pit, and not everything are these tiny little, tour pits that's out there. And that's a great way to get a lot of kids involved.
It limits us a little bit because there are, I'm not knocking on there are some amazing, like Grease is an amazing show. It's got great music, but if there's only 5 people in the pit, it's not giving enough, it's not providing as many opportunities as we would like.
Right. It's not the best fit for your program. Right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I would say the last thing we look at in picking a show is at the high school level, we try and think, what will a student's experience be over the course of 4 years? Like, we don't want to do 4 rock operas in a row. Okay. So we usually every other year, like classical show, modern show, so that if a student is involved in the theater program all 4 years, over the course of 4 years, they'll get a nice little sampling of what the musical theater world has to offer.
Do you take into consideration the requirements for the awards, like the Rising Star, when you make your pit, and like what's your goal for the ratio of like students to pros?
So the ratio is the only thing we take into account. For Rising Star, I want to say it's like 75-80% of your pit must be students, something like that. And we always make sure that we have that. And it kind of comes natural for us because we try to do as many students as possible. I audition all the students before I think about hiring any pros. So the pros are really there to fill seats that I don't have students for. And it varies year to year, usually what those pros are going to be playing. Aside from that one aspect, just to make sure we qualify, I don't really pay any mind to the award process or anything like that. My goal is always, by putting on the best show possible, the students will get the best experience possible. And then any awards or accolades will just kind of fall into place as they may, based on just always trying to do your best.
No, like once you've, kind of picked the show and everything, what's like your timeline with like, picking it to rehearsals to, like when are you choosing the show? When are you auditioning students? Like, what's that timeline look like?
Sure. I would say it's a lot bigger than people probably realize, because we're in the thick of musical season right now, but Les Mis opens next week, and we're already having conversations about what next year's show will be. The directing team, that's mm-hmm. a very closed door conversation. The kids have no idea that those conversations are happening. We'll pick a show late spring to ideally announce it to the kids before the end of the school year. And then I will, over the summer, I try to get a copy of the score if I can from, a friend who's done it, or online, and, MTI has perusal scores, Concord has perusal scores. And I just try to listen to the show as much as possible. And then we post the pit orchestra audition stuff, goes out on Halloween every year, and the kids have to submit, they do video recordings. They have to submit their videos before Thanksgiving. So they have that month of November is kind of a sweet spot for us, because marching band is over, and our winter concerts will be in December after the Thanksgiving break. So that month of November, they do the pit auditions, they come back, we pass the books out. In a perfect world, try to have a sight reading rehearsal before winter break. That doesn't always happen. But if you can have a sight reading rehearsal and get the books in the kids' hands over winter break, they realize the magnitude of playing in a pit. So some of the kids really do dive in and take that time to practice if they're not going on vacation. And then we get back January, February, pits are rehearsing once a week. Depending upon the show at the high school level, sometimes the pit will rehearse twice a week. For Mary Poppins, the music was the hardest music that I've ever had to deal with in a pit orchestra. I don't know if either of you have played that show.
Twice. It's so hard. Both times. It was hard. Yeah.
I love, like, Disney does some amazing stuff. To put it frankly, like, Disney does not care about you as a musician. Like, if they want the clarinet to bend over and do backflips while sounding like twinkly stars, like, they don't pay any mind to what the player has to do to make that happen. They want a certain effect to make it, have that magical Disney sound.
Right.
So we were doing twice a week last year, and then this year, because it's Les Mis and the whole show is just music, we had a couple of twice a week rehearsals this year also.
Now, before you go on, I'm just really quick. I'm really curious. So I'm assuming there are kids that are cut who make an audition video and they don't make it into the high school pit. What happens with those kids?
Every year we have a bunch of kids try out, and they're auditioning for a spot in either the high school pit orchestra or the middle school pit orchestra.
Oh, so they choose which they're auditioning for.
So they select. I'm available for both shows and would like to play for both. I'm available for both, but can only play for one. I am only available for the high school show. I'm only available for the middle school show. And then it slots them where they go.
So if they don't make the high school show, there's a possibility they can still play the middle school show or something like that.
Yes, absolutely. And the middle school show doesn't. I mean, our middle school show sells out a 600-seat auditorium because there's so many kids involved in the cast and crew. So I don't look at the middle school pit as being a lesser pit. And a lot of times I have better players in the middle school pit because it's less of a time commitment and it practices at night instead of right after school. So it's easy for some of the kids who do athletics or things. They'll wind up playing in that pit.
Right. And you do the full versions of everything. It's not like you're doing the junior version or anything like that.
No,
so
we
each
do.
Musical.
It's the full pro book. We want to give the kids the experience with the real music. As a teacher, I like to sit down and have follow-up conversations with the kids who don't make it. This is what you need to work on. Or sometimes, you have 5 really good drummers, but you only need one drum set player for your show. So it's not even a, hey, this is what you need to work on. It's, you were at a 97% and this kid was at a 97.5%. And that's just the way it broke down because we only have one spot for you, unfortunately.
So we're in the middle of the the 2 months beforehand, and then rehearsing every week or twice a week. And then tell us about like Tech Week.
Tech Week gets a little nuts for us. We've kind of developed this formula at the high school where we rent lights and we rent sound equipment, which may seem like a crazy, like, oh my God, you're so lucky, you have so much money. We don't have that much money. That's why we're renting the equipment. We charge $15 a ticket and the shows pay for themselves. And over the course of 10 years, we've kind of built up to this. So for the 2 weeks before the show, we get lighting equipment and we get sound equipment. So the kids are getting to use extra things. And Tech Week, the pit is rehearsing every day after school for 3 or 4 hours. And then the week of the show, same thing, but like 6 or 7 hours. So we'll have it with the high school show. We'll have about 4 or 5 full dress rehearsals before we open up for the public.
Yeah, and it's like you really got to weigh the cost of some of those things because like maintaining that equipment, especially if like there's not someone in your building that is comfortable maintaining that equipment, can be really costly. Just between the lights and all the mics that you require, and the numbers slightly different every year. And these are professionals that like have given microphones to kids and other, organizations that have done this very same book that you're working on. They know what you need. They know, they work with you, right, to make sure you have on stage what you need.
Yeah, absolutely. The companies, being so close to New York City, there are so many great production companies in the area. We've worked with a number of them over the years, and they're incredibly helpful. They like to give discounts to schools. They like to get their name out there. And you'd be surprised what, renting a couple extra microphones or a couple extra lights, or for us, it was renting a couple extra speakers to be like front fills in our auditorium because of the way it's designed. It makes a night and day difference just to rent a couple of things to amplify whatever your existing setup that your school has.
Yeah, it made a huge difference in my husband's previous district. Another middle school that did a full pit with the full, the full book and everything, and renting the screens to have like different parts of the stage highlighted with the camera, so that like you know, just because it's still a middle school stage, right? But having that extra layer of like visual for the audience, like everybody could be seen, every corner of the stage, you know, really, you know, like there's not really a place for a spot, so how are you going to get that main character highlighted? There you go. Like the, you know, bringing in professionals to make that happen was like a huge difference for their middle school production, you know, and the sound, it really elevated it, especially, you know, when you're trying to incorporate middle school voices over a full pit orchestra. It makes a huge difference to do that, you know.
Yeah. we talk about that a lot, where like the kids get so used to singing along with the CD or singing along with the computer or their iPhone. I'm like, you guys know that like there's going to be a real trumpet playing that part, and you have to compete with that trumpet player. So
it's you versus that trumpet player.
you gotta give it your all into that microphone.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yes.
So
Yes.
there's a learning curve there too. So it's cool that you get that equipment for 2 full weeks for everybody to, you know, rehearse with.
David, how do you plan out your rehearsals before Tech Week? So like from, you know, obviously the first rehearsal is kind of sight reading and getting the books out, and then you get to Tech Week. How do you divide up the numbers for the rehearsals? Do you have obviously you have a plan, and I want to know what that plan is.
So the plan varies show to show. Generally, we rehearse the show in show order, because that just makes the most sense, and I'm able to teach the show, not just the notes on the page, but like the actual story and what's going on. I'm able to teach it to the pit orchestra. So I like going in order, but with some of the bigger shows, you kind of identify not necessarily the hardest numbers, but like every show has, I call them production numbers. Like there's usually 2 or 3 in Act 1, 2 or 3 in Act 2. And these are the songs that people like, their jaws hit the floor. You get a standing ovation in the middle of the show. Like these are where you want these numbers to just be the best they can possibly be. And I try to highlight those early on. So like last year it was Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. Like that song, that was the first song we sight read as a pit, not the overture, not Spoonful of Sugar, none of the early stuff. We just dove, all right, open a song 11 and let's dive in. That's a knowing what those big numbers are and spending a lot of time to focus on them is certainly an important way to go about doing it. The big thing, you're working with students, so obviously we want them to practice and show up prepared to all of our rehearsals, but we know that doesn't always happen, especially like in our concert bands and stuff like that. But because the pit orchestras are dealing with professional level music, it is so important that the kids do put in that practice ahead of time. Even if they don't get it perfect, they need to have a sense of what the song is going to do so that they don't come in sight reading. So I'm very big on, you know, a week, 2 weeks out, because it's hard to plan months in advance. But letting the kids know, hey, these are the numbers we're going to work on Tuesday night. You know, please make sure you take time and look at these so that they show up and we can have an actual rehearsal and not me dragging them through and sight reading it. Part of the rehearsal process also giving the kids really good reference recordings, whether it's the practice track that the cast is using for the rehearsals when we're not there because we don't join them until Tech Week and Sits Probe, or if there's different versions of the show, or you find, you know, a high school has their version on YouTube and you want to send it to them, getting everybody on board with how you want your show to sound is really, really important. And then the last thing that I try to do is I try to budget time to review in the rehearsal. So like if it's a 2-hour rehearsal, I'll want to spend maybe an hour and 15 minutes working on new material and then save 30, 45 minutes to review at the end, so that like, oh, we practiced that song, you know, back in January, and then you get to Tech Week and you're like, oh, January is the last time we did that song. You want it, that's happened a couple of times where it's like, ooh, we haven't looked at this in 2 months. So especially with those bigger numbers, and it's great to start your rehearsal with a bigger number also. Like, you know, you tune and you just dive in and you plow through one of the larger numbers. It can set the tone for a very fun rehearsal instead of starting with something new every time.
I haven't had this experience. Like, what's your relationship? I know you said you do the vocals, so you kind of know what's going to happen on stage from your vocalists and everything. But like, what's that process like? Because I that's not something I've experienced before.
So the live singers, just like the live musicians, is the thing that makes conducting a pit so fun, but also it can be so wild and chaotic because when the cast forgets lines or they decide to sing something a certain way, that's going to change everything. Mm-hmm. At the high school, since I'm doing the vocals, I'm, on the days that I don't have pit, I'm with the cast. And I find that super, super helpful because I know the tempos that the kids like. I know where they like to breathe. I know that, okay, they're going to sing this part a little quiet. And so I want the pit to be softer. So it's knowing what the kids are going to do ahead of time is a huge, huge help. I know not a lot of conductors and teachers are comfortable doing both the pit and the vocals, and it does take a tremendous amount of time. But the advice I would say to people who are strictly the pit conductor is before you get to that tech week, tech week is a week or two before your show. A week or two before that, start going to some of the rehearsals and just watching and taking notes and seeing what the kids are doing and learning and understanding the cast to the best of your ability. And that's what I do at the middle school because I'm not down there. But before we show up, or before the pit shows up, I should say, I start making a point to go there after school a couple of days and see what the middle schoolers are doing so that I just get excited because you get to see the kids bringing the stuff to life. And there are certain songs you look forward to. And then you can hear also what they're struggling with, so you can start to prep for that. Because a lot of times if an actor is struggling with a specific song, if the pit can be rock solid on it, it gives that actor that extra boost of confidence to get them across the finish line. So I'll try and prioritize songs where the kids need a little bit of extra help or a little extra push so that we can really make sure that we're there for them and we catch them.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Bring your metronome.
Yeah.
That was something I remembered. I was like, oh man, the first time I went and conducted a pit, and I was like, well, the book says 120, but the vocal director is doing 145. Okay, that's a little different.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of crossed out tempos in my books.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, you're making notes of all that stuff. I bet. I went to a musical this weekend. My husband was playing in a pit orchestra, and it was a show I knew very well. And I'm watching what's going on, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's fast. And then it was like, oh wait, it looks like they knew that was gonna happen. And then somebody, kind of skipped a beat, and in one of the scenes, I was like, oh wow, that's well rehearsed. They accommodated for that very well. It's like, oh wow, it came together. They pulled it off, but it was one of those moments. It's like, oh, either they knew that was going to happen, or this is a very adaptable set of musicians. So but both make a good experience for the audience, so that's good. So great.
Yeah. And one thing that I was thinking about, and I've had experience a couple times over the many years that I've played shows, is that occasionally you'll run into somebody who is conducting a pit, who is the vocal director and has not had a lot of experience conducting, because as a vocal director, oftentimes they're playing piano and they're used to kind of just playing, and the kids kind of follow along and they don't really have to worry about anybody else. And then they get in front of a pit and it's a big adjustment to then realize you've got to pull 20 people along, and some of them may not be all that, experienced musicians themselves, and you've got to get everybody together. So taking that time to get the baton out, or to really just practice conducting the pieces and not just playing along with the kids, is so integral for someone who especially hasn't had a lot of experience with that. Now, David, I know that doesn't describe you because you're very comfortable on the podium, I know. But, there may be people out there listening who are, vocal directors and have had very little experience actually conducting the pit. You know what I mean?
I would say with the musicals, the actual conducting, it's hard to describe, but you your cueing is the biggest thing in pits, I would say. And the downbeats. You could just beat ones, and if your pit knows the music, they'll play the music. But no matter what is going on, give a downbeat for every single measure that happens, whether it's slow and it's fermatas and con la voce. Just give that one so that the cast, the pit following along, can keep track of those measures.
And only one downbeat per measure.
Yeah.
Yes. That is important.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I mean, speaking of that learning curve, David, like any mistakes, any regrets, anything we can all learn from, like that downbeat thing was good, but anything you want to share with us that you're like, oh man, don't fall into this, you know?
I don't think I have any regrets, which is good, because at the end of the day, theater is supposed to be fun. But you know, I've made countless mistakes over the years and still do. I would say the biggest trap that I fall into on a regular basis is when there's a long stretch of dialogue, or even a short scene, but just the kid on stage is doing such a good job with it, that I lose, like I just zone out because I'm so focused on them. And then I'm supposed to start a song, or I'm supposed to play pickup music into the next part of the scene or something. And I just completely space out and zone and don't do it. And then usually, like, you know, the violin player, the piano player, like whoever's close to me, they'll be like that was the cue. And I'm like, oh, okay, yes. Okay. Got it. Go. Here we go.
Yeah.
That's happened 1 or 2 times.
Yeah. You're part of the audience all of a sudden, you know?
Yeah. Which, I mean, the kids do such a good job. You know, it's easy to fall into that trap.
I noticed, I'm going to steal one of your notes here, David, that you wrote, have a highlighted script on a stand next to the score.
Yes.
In the 4 times that I've conducted a pit, I have found that so invaluable. And I know so many conductors who don't. They just have the score and the cue lines. And I'm like, oh man, if I don't have a script to watch, I'm sunk.
No, you need it. Especially the shows that have longer scenes, or even there's quick dialogue, and you need to be ready for that. And you can see in the script how close together the musical numbers are. Being able to follow is so important, especially when you're dealing with students who sometimes may have a tendency to skip dialogue or put lines out of order. You have to catch them. And if you have that script in front of you, it's much easier to catch them versus if you're just trying to go off that one cue line. In my experience, Jen, a trap we always fall into, every show has one song that just isn't fun, or, you know, the pit hates that song for what it like. Maybe it's the really fast one, maybe it's the really hard one, maybe it's the one with 6 flats, but every show has that one song. And my biggest piece of advice is don't shy away from that one song. You know, give that one song its due and practice it so that it's ready just like all the others. Don't avoid the hard stuff, or in this case, the song that might be annoying.
Yeah. I gotcha. I know, because then you're hanging somebody on stage out to dry if you guys aren't feeling it. So yeah. Oh, that's cool.
You know, Jen, I'm noticing here there was one thing that I didn't put in our show notes, and you didn't put it either, and I bet we just weren't thinking about it.
Okay,
and that is from the instrumentalist side of things. What do we love that pit conductors do, and what do we not like that pit conductors do?
Interesting.
I'm very curious as to what you two have to say about this, because I have not played in a pit since like 2014, because I've been conducting every year since then. So I'm very curious.
I like to get fed. I love it when
yes, especially if you're starting at like 4:00 and ending at 9:00. Yes.
Definitely. I love to get fed when I'm there from 4 to 9. Like, that's huge. No, just kidding. But not kidding. Like, even a cup of coffee, like, just gets you through those longer, afternoons and evenings. But no, I love the one downbeat per measure thing, because sometimes I'm with it, sometimes I'm counting and I'm on it, and sometimes I'm in the middle of, like, a tacit slash, oh, you play two measures in this thing, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh wait, we're on the next tune, and
I'm still holding my fermata on the rest.
Yeah, right. I'm still tacit two tunes ago. So I do like that
Yeah.
got that.
I would say the biggest thing from like a pro standpoint, but also from like a kid standpoint is I really love when conductors really utilize the pit in the time that they have them. And I said conductors and directors, because sometimes the directors are still running the show, running the rehearsal, even when the pit is there. And there will be 40 minutes of sitting time where they're working on lighting or choreography or whatever. My personal feeling is that if the orchestra is there, that's your time to work with the orchestra.
Yeah.
Like work with the other stuff at another point. And stuff happens, of course, and you have to stop, and extenuating circumstances always happen. But that's the biggest thing for me is like we're all there as musicians and we love to be used.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, getting bogged down in rehearsal can be quite frustrating. So, yeah, no, I like cuts ahead of time. I really like that as a pro coming in. Like, yeah, cut, and not in the moment. Like, oh yeah, that's right, we cut 4 measures tape. Okay, go. That can be kind of stressful. But
So that's actually something that I didn't mention in the notes in preparation is I have a running Google Doc where if we make cuts or notes, I'm putting them in the Google Doc after each rehearsal. And the pros aren't coming to those rehearsals, and I'm not trying to inundate them with emails, but I'll send them that doc ahead of time so they can check in on it as they want. And then, a couple days, week before they come to join us, reminder, you have this doc. It has all the cuts, as well as just like, this kid is really quiet, so the orchestra has to play soft for this song. Just things so they have as much information as they can going in ahead of time.
Yeah, I'm always looking at that stuff. I find that so helpful. So yeah, awesome.
I found one just a tip I remember back from doing. I think you were in it, David. 7 Brides for 7 Brothers.
That was my senior year show.
One thing that I started doing during those couple years where I was conducting at Morristown is I had a little like digital pocket recorder, and I'm not talking like a cell phone, but just something where you literally have a record button and you push it and you say stuff and then you let go. You plug it into your computer and you've got all your voice notes. So while they were running the show, if like measure 23 didn't really work right, I'd just take out my little recorder and go, measure 23, I need to work on that one. And then I would just take it out after the show and kind of run through all my own voice notes and put that in for the next day's rehearsal or the next the next cut sheet or something like that. So I don't know, David, if you do something similar, but I found that really useful for our listeners at least. That actually, I love that idea, and that's something I'm going to have to give a try. When I'm in the pit, I'm still very old school. I have on that music stand with the highlighted script, I purchase about 3 legal pads for each tech week, and I've got pens and pencils galore, and I am tearing up those legal pads with notes every rehearsal. But I like that old school mentality because I like writing it down. I'll remember it, and I get more out of a handwritten note than I do just typing something on my computer. Yeah. As sometimes I found that just things went so fast, especially when it was, show week. Things were going so fast. I didn't have time to write down the things I wanted to write down and then make sure I was still with the cast on stage. So that's why I started doing that voice recorder thing.
It's hard to do it in the moment. If you're going to write your notes, like when intermission hits, send the pit on break, give them all their info, but take 2 minutes and just think through the act real quick and jot down everything while it's still fresh in your mind.
Like a brain dump or something.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, because you're never going to remember like the next day.
No, or
all
then
the
and then
little things.
There's nothing worse than like you show up the next day and you're running through it and you're like, oh yeah, this spot was terrible yesterday too, and you just completely forgot about it. Yeah. I'm gonna have to try that voice recorder thing.
It's super because it's super fast. I speak faster than I write, so I was able to get more down.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I love getting a show shirt. David, does your pit get the show shirt? Like, how are we part of the crew? Like, are we part of the crew? Are we part of the whole vibe?
You're hitting the nails on the head. I can talk from a professional standpoint, hitting on some of the things you guys have just said, where I think the number one thing that we can do as teachers is be respectful of our students' time. And I think that's a great lesson that we can teach them. So kind of getting back to Erik's point where, the pit is there, use them. Especially if you're paying a pro $400 or $500 to come in, that's a lot of money. And if they're there for 3 hours and they only play for one, you as the music director, you got to make the most of that. So be respectful of your musicians' time. Feed your musicians. All our pros that play in Morristown, we provide any rehearsal that you come to that's during Tech Week. We make sure we feed you or let you know ahead of time what the pizza plan is and get you in on the orders and everything. And then the pit always gets show shirts, Jen.
Thanks.
Even the pros, we make sure we have stuff for everyone. And that's sort of like, so moving away from the professionals to the students, something that we've spent a lot of time working in Morristown, and I've been very adamant with, is you used to see, and I don't think this is unique to Morristown, but you would see congrats to the cast and crew of the show. Or they put the cast names on the back of the T-shirt, but not the pit names. It's we've worked on building up a program where every member of the company is respected, no matter what they do: hair and makeup, house crew, costumes, lighting, special effects, sound. So the pit orchestra is as much a part of the show as anybody else. So the pit kids get bios, they get a photo in the playbill, they get their names on the T-shirt, they get the early ticket access for their families, just like the cast does. Everyone is a contributing member of this amazing product that we're doing. And the pit is not playing second fiddle in any regard.
No, that's huge. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, that's great.
I love that, especially the bios. That's something that you don't see a lot, even in high schools that do, acknowledge the pit musicians. But a lot of times you get, either senior bios or you get bios of everybody, and sometimes you get photos, like cast photos, and the pit's kind of like left out of all of that. So I really love that Morristown makes it a point to include the pit as well. And I've noticed that with movies too. Occasionally now you'll see movies in the credits, you'll see the whole orchestra credited, which is rare, but shouldn't be.
But that's awesome. No, you thank your musicians. They're making it work. They're making it what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. I loved your comment about being respectful of people's time. I think that's so critical. And one other thing to go along with that is if you say you're going to end at 9 o'clock, they're done. Mm-hmm. Yep. I've been in so many pits where it's, they say it's going to be 4 to 9 and it gets to 9 o'clock and we had to wait for 45 minutes while they choreograph something. And now the director is usually saying, oh, well, the pit musicians can stay another half hour. No problem.
Not how that works.
Yeah. Not when they auditioned way back, in between Thanksgiving and Christmas, when not when they've been working on this music since then. That's your pit musicians as students are just as prepared as anybody else in that room. Yeah. They've been at this a while. Let them go, and it's time.
Yes. Yeah. We had Sitz Probe today was 3 to 5:30. We finished one day more, the Act 1 finale, at 5:29 and 30 seconds. And I was so proud of myself that I finished 30 seconds early today.
That's nice. A way to go.
I mean, look, a couple minutes over is no big deal. But, right. When they're when you said 8:30 and it's now 8:40 and you're like, all right, let's get out the biggest dance number that we have the biggest problem with. Don't
save problems like that for the end of rehearsal because everyone's fried at that point anyway. If you have something you need to tackle, the show will run itself, and all those kinks will work themselves out. How? We don't know. It's a mystery. But front load those bigger problems, the harder numbers, when everyone is still fresh and awake.
David, was there anything before we get to Jen's last question? Is there anything else you want to add? Anything that your tips and tricks for people getting into it?
I know we focused a lot on the students, and I think the more we're working with schools. The more opportunities you can give your students, the better. But it is also great, and it's a great learning opportunity for them. When you hire pros and bring in adults to work with your students, obviously you want them to play the book well, you want it to sound good, but in my mind that's not the most important thing I'm looking for when I bring in a pro. I want somebody who's going to sit with my kids, react with my kids, talk with my kids, and be an extra mentor and teacher in that time that they get to work together. So if anybody's out there hiring people, look, there are so many great musicians in North Jersey, so many amazing educators, work together and bring those people in who are going to help not only make your students better, but make you better.
Yeah. Call me, David. Call me. I'm just kidding.
That's great.
That's awesome advice.
Everyone's always like, call me. I'm like, I got students. I got a kid playing it.
I know,
I'm
that's
sorry.
the thing. That's amazing. That's huge. No, that's the coolest thing. But that's the program you want to work with too, as a pro, right? And as an educator, that's amazing. So
your feeders need to stop doing such good jobs.
I hear I have a banger oboe player coming up soon.
Now you got to make a show with an oboe book.
There you go.
That's on the list. Don't you worry.
Awesome. Speaking of what's on the list, like your bucket list for shows, like what do you really, really want to conduct? Like just totally selfishly, not thinking about like what for you, what do you want to conduct next?
So right now, like I said, we're doing Les Miserables, and that is a dream come true. Getting to put this monster together is incredible. I would love to do a production of Ragtime. It's a little bit of a lesser known musical. It deals with race relations around the turn of the 20th century in the 1920s when ragtime music was popular. And you have white, African American, and then European immigrants all in this melting pot. And the themes of that show, I think, are still relevant today, but the music is just absolutely incredible. I had a chance to be in a community theater production of it right when I got out of college, and I would love to conduct that. And then the first Broadway show I ever saw was Wicked. And I would love, I don't know if it'll ever become a high school show where we're making kids fly.
It'll never leave Broadway, so it won't.
That's the problem also.
Right.
But that'll be the retirement plan. I'll leave teaching and I'll take up the baton at the Gershwin conducting Wicked. That would be
perfect.
That would be a dream come true.
All right, Jen, any on your list to play?
To play. Oh man. Well, I've already played Mary Poppins a couple times, and I love that. I love that show from being a kid and just watching the movie over and over and over and over and over. Yeah. I don't know. The music for Lion King sounds fun. I've never done Lion King. Have you done that one?
No, it's still on Broadway. They don't have a rental.
That's right. Oh gosh. Yeah. So, maybe someday Lion King could happen for me, but
Nice.
I think that's up there. You, Erik?
Oh, I know one that's on my bucket list, and our listeners who are familiar with music, with musicals may kind of roll their eyes at this one. I want to play drums because I don't know if our listeners know this. I do actually play drum set. I would want to play drums on Jesus Christ Superstar.
Nice.
That one was the first musical I ever fell in love with, and like that would be a dream come true. Would be to play drums on Jesus Christ Superstar.
Okay, rock on. This is some great conversation about your students and musicals and making this happen here in North Jersey. So, anything else we're missing, guys?
I hope I was helpful in giving some advice to people who, if you've been doing it for a while and you got a new tip or trick, or if you're going to start the foray into musicals soon, hopefully I was helpful.
Yeah. I think like if you want like a outrageous, out of this world, crazy competitive marching band, Texas is your place, right? And of course Morristown. But I think if you want like Broadway level musicals, there is really no place like Northern New Jersey.
Oh, it's so true.
So many great programs around here.
Yeah. Well, David, thank you so much for being here with us. And Erik, thank you for coming up with this topic for this month. This is a good one to hit in March because so many of the schools around here are deep into their, musical season. So thanks, guys. This was a really fun chat.
Oh, no, absolutely. Yeah. Thank you guys so much for having me.
Awesome. Awesome.
Great.
Well, to our listeners, If you liked our conversation today, don't forget to subscribe. Make sure that you rate and review the podcast on your favorite podcast app because it helps other people find us who might be interested in conducting pit orchestras or marching bands or learning how to teach saxophones or learning how to teach flutes. Or all of the other amazing things that we do here on Take a Cue.
That's right. And you could find us on Facebook, Instagram, and definitely YouTube. You'll get to see our smiling, shining faces out there on YouTube when you tune in there.
Yes.
And if you're doing something fantastic with your pit orchestra this season and you want to share it with us, chime in on social media. We want to hear about it, and we want to hear what you're doing, whether you're here in the mecca of high school orchestras, North Jersey, or not. We want to hear what you're up to because there's fantastic things going on all over the country with pit orchestras and musicals and involving our students, and we want to hear about it.
Indeed. All right, Jen. Well, until next time, let's get out there and make some great music.
Yo.